Hey everyone, and welcome back to another live video brought to you by my iPhone while I'm still waiting for my computer to either be fixed or a new one sent to me. Today we're going to be going over questions that I get most often on my channel. I spent the last few days going through thousands of comments and making a list I got here for us to go over. Let me know down in the comments. Throw a like up there if you're hearing everything fine. Just want to make sure everything sounds normal for you. And also let me know where you're from. So for today's questions, I'm going to be sticking with mostly technical filmmaking type things because last time I had, or not last time, but I had a few questions as well with things like, how did you get started in video? How did you get started with YouTube? Things like that. Just more background type stuff. So I'll make another video on those type of things at another time, but I'm going to just stick strictly with actual filmmaking things that I get most often. And again, let me know down in the comments where you're from, where you're watching from, if you can hear everything fine, and we'll get this going here in just a second. So starting off, what focal length do you use for your videos? So this is somewhat of a loaded question, I guess, but for my YouTube videos, I almost always have this 24-70 G Master lens f2.8, and when I'm shooting my videos, the talking head stuff, I always have it set to 35. That's my favorite look that I like for where I am. I use 50 a lot when I'm shooting short films and stuff like that. Usually between 24 and 50. That's 24, 35, and 50 I think is all I use for my last short film, Bedtime. And I'll link that down in the description if you haven't seen that in case you want to. But I'm actually starting to collect more prime lenses because they are sharper. You can get a lower aperture, a better look for it. And I used all Sigma art lenses for that last video. And we bought our first one last week, a Sigma 85mm 1.8 art for the Sony lens. This thing is really big, but really good quality. I got the 85 because I already have 24-70 covered right now, and my wife does photography as well, and she likes the 85, so I got that for her to use as well. And I'm just collecting that. Next will probably be 35mm, and then maybe the 50, and then the 24, and that's all I really need for now. Next question. I get a lot of questions about speed ratings for cards, memory cards. So why do some say U1, U3, V30? What do all those different ones mean? So I got a couple memory cards here for you. This is the one I use. See if that shows up. Right there it says class 6. So that 6 means that it'll write at a minimum of 6 megabytes per second, sustained. And that's the number you care about most for video because you need a sustained write speed in order to make sure your videos will be good. Not be good, but it'll be able to keep up with the recording speed. So the next up you have this rating. If you can see it, this is a class 10. It's a C with a 10 in it. And that's just the next step up, class 10, minimum of 10 megabytes per second. So then you have this. They're rated at U1 and class 10, and that means the same thing. U1 means 10 megabytes per second minimum write speed, the same as class 10, but the U1 cards are newer, the U1 and U3, and that's just a different type of recording bus filing systems. Not to get complicated, it gives you the same speeds. But then you have U3, which that one shows U3 and class 10, so it's for the old ratings, it's still going to give you at least 10 megabytes per second, but the U3 means that it's 30 megabytes per second that you're going to get minimum sustained write speed. So now there's V ratings, and the V is basically video speeds is what they're made for. So you have V30, V60, V90. I actually saw on this one it has a V10. I never even noticed that before, but it's the same thing, 30 megabytes per second, 60 or 90 minimum sustained write speed that you're going to get for recording video. So you just have to see what your camera's max recording bitrate is, do the conversions to megabytes per second, and make sure you're good to go. Because with, I think I have it right here. I'm using UHS-2 cards in my Sony, and this is a V, it's kind of dark. This one's rated V60, it's UHS-2, but The U ratings only go up to U3, so this says U3 but V60 as well, so you really want to pay attention to the V speeds when it comes to getting the UHS-2 cards to make sure you have that high enough recording rate for your video. So next up, are you loose sharpness with UV filters? I think they're asking, do you lose sharpness? So UV filters, made a video on those, but basically UV filter is supposed to filter out certain UV rays, which affected film more so than digital cameras because they have their own filters built into them to keep from doing that. So whenever you put another piece of glass over your lens, yes, you're always going to lose some sharpness. You're probably not going to notice it much, especially if you get a quality one that's more expensive, which most people don't want to do. But the best your camera's going to look is with nothing on that lens because it's designed for it to be that way. So if you have nothing on there, it's going to look the best, but then you're not protecting your excuse me, you're not protecting your lens. I've actually saved this lens. I dropped my camera bag a few months ago when I was getting off an airplane, and I forgot about it till the next day when I pulled my camera out to film a video. The UV filter was completely shattered and it saved the lens. It bent the front of my lens a little bit, but the glass was fine, thankfully. So it can save you, and it has saved me a couple times. Next up, can you use micro cards with an adapter in DSLR cameras? And people ask this because these are typically a lot cheaper than the normal size ones. So just dropped it. So basically, can I just stick this in the adapter, put it in the camera, and record? You can, but I wouldn't suggest it because even though this micro SD card may be fast enough for you to record, this isn't designed for that. This is just designed to put the micro SD card in there, stick it in your computer, and then transfer your files. So you can try it. If it works, fine, but I wouldn't suggest it because it's not designed for it. And I don't want to risk my film, especially if I'm doing a wedding or something that I'm really getting paid for, trusting it to this little cheap adapter. So cards really aren't that expensive unless you're getting up with those new R5 CFast CF Express cards that are $600. Then you know you're paying for it for a reason because it's really high quality. So next up, what do you recommend? Okay, so I get this a lot. Say, you know, it's an M50. Someone says, I have an M50 or a T5i or whatever type of camera. What do you recommend as far as memory cards for filming video tutorials or for filming vlogging or for doing real estate videos? So it doesn't matter what kind of video you're filming. It doesn't matter if it's a vlog or if it's real estate. This camera has a max recording bit rate for its highest 4K settings. So regardless of what type of filming you're going to do, you just need to make sure that your card is fast enough for the highest video rate in the camera. And I have videos that explain how to do that. I have lots of memory card videos. If you need to know, just search my channel, memory cards or SD cards, and I've got videos for Canon, Panasonic, Sony, GoPros, DJI, all kinds of stuff. So you should be able to find what you need. But all that matters is making sure it's fast enough for the highest recording bitrate on your camera. How do I choose spot metering on my camera? So I made another video on different meterings. You have evaluative, center weighted, spot metering, or the main three that most DSLRs and mirrorless cameras come with. And there's some variation of the titles, but they do the same things. But spot metering is what I use most because you can take the spot right in the middle of your camera, put it on someone like their face or somewhere on their skin to make sure you don't overexpose their skin and it looks right regardless of the surroundings. So what I found out when I got this M50 as opposed to this A7 III, all the higher end cameras that I've used allow you to put any mode you want when you're in video, but with these cheaper ones, they only allow you to look at spot metering when you're in photo mode. So it's kind of a pain. If you want to use that, you have to switch to a photo mode, go to spot metering, set up the exposure how you want, and then switch back to video and make sure your settings are the same. So that's a bit of a pain, or you can just get used to seeing how your camera does in different situations, and you learn exposure pretty quickly and how to tell if certain things are overexposed. But that is a workaround that's a pain, not something you want to do if you're trying to use this for a live event like a wedding, which I probably wouldn't want to use this for that. You're going to want to put out some money and invest in quality stuff if you're getting paid. Next up, why won't my videos fill the screen? So on my aspect ratio videos, people ask this all the time. Is there a way to make sure that my videos fill up the entire screen on all devices? And the answer is no, because a computer may have a 16:9 screen, or a TV has a 16:9 screen. Cell phones have anywhere from 19 to 20, 21:9 screens even now. And then iPads, theirs are a lot more square. So with iPads, you're always going to have big lines on the top and bottom when you're watching movies. And it is annoying, but that's just how it is because devices are different sizes. So when it comes to picking which aspect ratio you want, you just have to think, what are your people watching, or what are you going to watch it on? How do you want it to look? What style you're going for, and go from there. But there isn't one aspect ratio you can use that will fill every screen that anybody watches from. Next up, can I use UHS 1 instead of UHS 2? Or if I'm going to record in full HD, not 4K. And then a similar question, in order to shoot 120 frames per second, how many megabytes or bits do I need? And also I get questions like, how long will it take to fill up a 64 gigabyte card or a 256 gigabyte card? So all those questions I can't answer unless I know what kind of camera you have. Because again, it comes back to this card may be able to film, this U3 card can film 4K on my A7S III, but when it comes to the Canon R5, it can't because the recording bit rates are a lot higher, so it's not going to work. And cards will get filled up depending on what the recording speed is of the camera. So this M50 may record 4K, I'm just throwing out there, 20 megabits per second, where my A7S III does it at 100 megabits per second. So it's going to fill up 5 times faster on the A7S III, or sorry, I don't have that camera yet, A7 III, than it will on that M50. So once again, it depends on what camera you're using, what the data rate is for the mode that you're using. It's not as simple as how long will this card last me for 4K, because all cameras shoot at different rates. So I got asked, I have a video where I took, what was it, I used to have a 5D Mark III that my wife used before we switched to Sony, and I had it up holding the shutter button down to show a burst mode of pictures when I was making an example for a memory card video. Then I took the camera and went like this, and then I set it back up behind me on the shelf how I normally had it. And then on the next take, to finish out the shot, I just went like this and then started talking again to make a match cut, basically, and it looked like I just kind of threw the camera over my shoulder. And a lot of people thought that was real, and I got a lot of people asking, did you actually throw the camera? Please tell me you didn't throw that expensive camera. No, please tell me you didn't hurt that beautiful camera body. And no, that was a match cut. That was just trying to do something interesting in the video, and apparently it worked because a lot of people thought it was real. Some people got upset about it too. It was pretty funny to read some comments. But match cuts, if you don't know what that is, I just made a couple videos on that not too long ago. They're linked in the description as well. One on examples of match cuts, and then another one on us recreating match cuts from certain films to show how to do it, how to edit them, how to make them work to make your videos look more interesting. Next up, can you stack filters? So for example, taking this UV filter off again, but say you have that on your camera, you're out filming and you don't want to be taking filters on and off. So then you have your ND filter you want to use because you're outside and you want to have the shutter speed a certain amount with a wider aperture. So can I just stick these on top of each other, keep that on the camera? Sure, you can. I've done that. I usually try to make sure there's no dust or anything on them, because the more lenses you stack on, the more you're introducing dust and other dirt and particles, which you don't want to get on your picture because you can't remove that, or it takes a lot of work if you try to. But then you're also, like I said before, the more things you stack on top of that lens, the less sharp your video is going to look. So it's better to just put as few on there as possible. Just take the extra time, take one off, put the other on. Unless you're throwing an ND filter plus a polarizer or something like that, I wouldn't really suggest it, because the more things you stack as well, the more color fringing and other issues you can start having, because that glass isn't as well designed as the glass in your lens. Next up, When suggesting lenses, are you talking about full frame or crop sensor? So in case you don't know what that means, get these two cameras out for you. This camera, M50, has an APS-C sensor. See the size of it. This A7 has a full frame sensor. So this one's a lot bigger than this one. Camera focal lengths are designed based on a full frame sensor, 35 millimeter. So when I say a focal length, I'm talking about 24 millimeters, what it looks like on a full frame camera. Or equivalent focal length, for instance, if you were using this, has a 1.5 or 1.6 times crop factor. So to look at that same 24 millimeters, you would need a 16 millimeter lens. So I'm talking about what 24 millimeters or whatever focal length I'm talking about should look like, and then you have to do the calculation to get that same lens or equivalent lens on a different size sensor. So if you're using a GH5, for example, with a micro four thirds, it's a double crop factor, then you'd have to get a 12 millimeter to get to 24. So you just have to figure that out depending on what kind of camera you need. Another reason I like full frame cameras is because you don't have to do all those calculations. Next up, can I use a UHS-1 card on a UHS-2 port? For example, this A7 III, one slot is UHS-1 and the other is UHS-2. I'm not sure why they did that, because the highest recording rate is less than 30 megabytes per second, so you don't even need a UHS-2 card. Maybe there's some picture modes that take higher quality, but I never use that. So the difference is UHS-1 card, single row pins. UHS-2 card has 2 rows to get higher speeds. So you can use this in a UHS-2 port, but you're only going to get the UHS-1 speeds. Whereas you can also use the UHS-2 card in a UHS-1 port, but you're only going to get the UHS-1 speeds because the camera or whatever adapter you're using doesn't have the ports to make it go faster. So the lowest common denominator is the speed you're going to get if you're mixing different speeds. Next up, for high-end footage like 4K or 120 frames per second video in general, will an expensive SD card keep great video quality in post-editing production? So no, your SD card will not have any difference. If I use, this 8 gigabyte class 6 card compared to this UHS-2 V60 card, if my camera speed recording rate is lower than this class 6, then the video will look no different regardless of which card you use. The only thing that your card will control is if it's not fast enough for your camera, then you'll start getting recording errors. Some newer cameras will stop recording and say, hey, you need a card that's rated at least this much, or some older cameras may just quit recording and say error. And that's probably the first issue, is your card's not fast enough. So look in your camera manual. If you don't have one, you can look it up online easily and see what cards they recommend for your camera. Simple as that. And also, does a more expensive card make your video sharper? No, it doesn't. Again, it's just recording what the camera's doing. It doesn't change sharpness, quality, anything. It just records what the camera gives it. What adapter do you use for your MacBook Pro? I've gone through so many junky adapters for USB and SD cards that just stop working after a couple months. So this is what I use. It's a SynStar USB-C adapter. It has 3 USB ports, an HDMI, Ethernet, another USB-C. I think you can use that to charge, but I never do because I have a charger hook straight to my computer. SD card slot and micro SD, which those are the only 2 I really ever use. And sometimes this HDMI when I'm hooking up to my monitor here. But this thing is rated pretty fast. I researched these a lot. Transfer stuff quickly. I think it's like $40 or something like that. I'll have that linked in the description as well. But if you have a lot of newer cameras as well, let's see, has one of these slots, USB-C right there, and a lot of them have USB ports, and you can transfer through those. So you really don't have to get any kind of adapter. You can, a lot of newer cameras especially, you can transfer straight to your computer. So you don't necessarily need one. Next up, my camera quits recording after a few seconds. What do I do? And another one similar, my video files are corrupting more often than ever. I have this type of camera. It's a Canon DSLR. I use SanDisk cards, please help. So if you're having issues with your cards corrupting or your camera quits recording after a few seconds, first off, format the card in your camera if you have a fast enough card. If you don't have a fast enough card, that's probably your problem. But format the card, and what that's doing is it erases everything on the card, so make sure you have it backed up somewhere else, whatever footage you had on it, and it sets up the camera, or sets up the card in the camera to record properly in the filing system of the camera. So for instance, if I was using a card in this camera and I took it out and I wanted to record with this one, you would want to format it first after making sure you offload your footage, because they record different filing systems, formats. You start mixing that up, you're just asking for trouble. So either have separate cards for your different cameras or format it when you go from one to the other. Whenever you get a new card, format it for that camera. I always, every time, offload my cards, reformat it, you're good to go. You shouldn't have issues if your card is fast enough. So what about the switch on the side of the card? I didn't mention this in my SD card video, but that little switch is just a lock. So you push that down and it keeps anything from being able to be written to the card. Simple as that. What aspect ratio should I use? So similar to previous where people were asking what aspect ratio will fill every screen, what aspect ratio should you use really depends on the type of video you're doing. You're just doing a normal YouTube video, 16:9 is the normal aspect ratio. I use 18:9 a lot for my videos just because I like the way it looks. It fills up more of most smartphone screens and doesn't give a whole lot of extra black bars when you're watching on a computer or a TV or something like that. But then there's 21:9, a lot of people use for the cinematic look. It's just more widescreen. There is 4:3, which is the older one, older TVs. I've used that once, rarely. I did that for a film I did where I had kind of a home movie type feel to it. So it just depends on what you want to do. There's not really a one aspect ratio fits all. There's different reasons to use different ones. And I have some videos on that as well, explaining with examples when different aspect ratios may look good. So this is one of my favorites. I made a video at the beginning of the year, the best cameras for beginner filmmakers in 2020. And I gave two cameras, one Sony, one Canon, under $1,000. And then for people that had a little bit higher budgets, I did one of each brand that was over $1,000 to give you a little bit better quality and better options. So I get people asking, this is an actual question, in 2020, under $1,000, which camera will be better for 4K video making? Please advise some names. Or someone may ask, this is my budget, what camera should I get? And their budget is exactly what I said in the video, and I said what cameras I suggest. So I don't know if people are watching the videos or not. They just click on it and write the question and leave, hope I answer them. But it's right there, so make sure you actually watch and listen to videos, because I try not to ever do clickbait type stuff. I want to actually give good information and give it quickly so I don't waste people's time. And also, when you are looking at gear and cameras, if you're budgeting for a new camera, if you don't even have one yet, keep in mind lenses too, because most kit lenses, like this thing that comes with the Canon M50, is not that good. It's fine to get started with, but if you have a $2,000 budget, rather than getting something like the A7 III with a kit lens that comes with it, I would suggest getting a cheaper camera and then spending more on a lens that will make your videos look better. So next one is kind of similar. So a lot of people have done this. They ask, what card do you need for a camera that was literally the first one in the video? So I made, like I said before, videos for SD cards for Canon, for Sony, Panasonic, all these different brands, because the very first video I made on SD cards is the one that's gotten the most views and still brings in the most subscribers, and it tells you how to figure out your camera's max recording rate and how to pick a card based on that. But everyone always asks, hey, I have this camera, what card do I need? So I made videos finally on each of these different brands to help people out. And then, for example, I think the T6 or T6i is one of the first ones in my DSLR video. I say, hey, this is what you should use for the T6i. It gives you this much recording time, it gives you this resolution, blah, blah, blah. There's a link in the description for it as well. And then someone says, hey, I have a T6i. What card do you recommend for 4K, or I don't know if it does 4K, 1080, whatever. And I just think, I always write back, hey, it's that's the first one that I suggest in the video, so I'd, you know, suggest the card that's at, and I'll put a timestamp on there, and also say it's also listed in the description for you so you can find it easily. You know, obviously I don't want to be mean to anyone, and I want to be kind and polite, but some people, it's funny when they chime in. One guy said, 2 videos that explain everything perfectly, and yet you still have people asking all these silly questions because they're too lazy to look it up themselves. Good job on the replies. So yeah, I'm going to help people as much as I can, and really it's better for the videos because the more comments you get, the more YouTube thinks people like your videos. But it's just funny because it's literally the first thing. So I don't know if people click on it, just write a comment and then leave to see if I'll just answer them so they don't have to watch for 1 minute to find out. And I even have timestamps as well to show you where to find yours. But it is what it is. So how do I make my camera shoot 18:9? So a lot of people ask how to make their camera shoot various aspect ratios. Unless you're using a cinema camera, or I think the Panasonic S1H has different aspect ratios you can choose from when you're recording. Most cameras all shoot at 16:9. And the way to change the aspect ratio is when you get to editing, you're gonna have to set up your project and then make the size of your video fit that project. So if you're ever doing wider than 16:9, you have to keep in mind while you're recording that you're gonna lose the top and bottom depending on how much you're doing when you get to editing. So just keep that in mind so you don't get to that, start setting up your aspect ratio and be thinking, oh, well, now I just lost something that I needed in my video. Got a few more here. Yeah. So people ask me about making videos on stuff I've already done. For example, someone was watching a memory card video or something and said, can you drop a beginner ND filter video, please? I've been waiting. So I made one 2 years ago, year and a half, something like that, on ND filters. So whenever you go to someone's channel, if you like their stuff, you're watching a lot, usually, you know, I think I have 80 videos now. If you go into search, not overall YouTube, but on the channel, you can search and type in ND filter or SD card, or you can see if that person has made a video on those topics. So then you'll already know, and you won't be sitting there waiting for something that's already there and you're not gonna see because you're waiting for them to post it, but it's already there. So search function is really good. You can look at YouTubers' channels. Like if you look at Casey Neistat, he has, I don't know how many thousands of videos, and sometimes I might want to see something that he talked about, some type of gear, and can search that. It pops up, easy to find, rather than trying to scroll through and see what I'm looking for. So, hi, do you have an old camera for making films? You don't need it? If so, can you give it to me, please? Or can you send me free SD cards? So I'm not an SD card manufacturer. I do have one camera that I never use, but it's not worth anything, that T2i. It's a prop that I use for my background now. I have my A7S II that I use sometimes when I need 2 cameras, since it matches my A7 III just about perfectly, but I'm gonna sell that once I get my A7S III here. So I don't have a bunch of extra stuff just laying around. I use the stuff I get, and I'm trying to keep it down to a minimum of what I actually need. So I don't have free stuff to give away, sorry. Couple more here. Why does my camera stop recording after 30 minutes? So just about every Canon camera, Panasonic and Sony with the A7S III is finally getting away with the recording limits, but I made another video on this, I'll link as well, but I forget how long ago it was, early 2000s, when DSLRs were getting popular with video. Over in Europe, they started placing a tax on any camera that would record video over 30 minutes because you could hook them up to TVs and record movies, and then people, they're afraid of them not having to pay cable and all this stuff and pirating movies, so they put a bigger tax on cameras in order to keep people to recoup their money that they would be losing in other places. But pretty sure that tax is gone now. Cameras are starting to get away from it, except Canon. Even with the new R5, you look in the manual and it says 29-minute, 59-second recording limit, and that's what that's based on. You can't get around that unless you have an external recorder. So, last question here. How long did it take you to get to different subscribers? 100, 1,000, 10,000? I had one person ask, did your channel blow up overnight, or has it taken a long time? I started my channel in March of 2018, so 2.5 years ago about now. It took me 3 months to get to 100 subscribers. So that was about 12 videos I put out and just trying to stay consistent every week. And then about 10 months, I hit 1,000 subscribers, 10 months in. And then I started 2019 with around 1,000. I think by the end of the year, I was at 6,000. And then between this year, January to June, is when I got to 20,000. So I got 5,000 subscribers over all of 2019. And then in 2020, the first half of the year, I got another, I'm at 12 now, so doubled that. So it definitely starts to pick up the more you do. A lot of stuff that goes into that is making good thumbnails, making good titles, learning how to put in tags and titles so that people can search your stuff and YouTube knows what to recommend, and just getting more subscribers, more views, more watch time. It just takes time. You see all these people that have tons of subscribers and keep blowing up and you think, oh man, that must be easy. But most of the people that you're watching have been doing it for 3 or more years and been slowly growing. And once you get to a certain point, it really starts growing. I have another friend who, he was where I was about a year ago and he's over 50,000 now. So it can grow quickly. It just depends on what you're talking about too, how much people are interested, how you put your spin on it to make it interesting. But that's all the stuff for this time. Still waiting on my computer to get back. I was told now they're not sending me a new one, they're actually replacing a part. Hopefully it'll be here next week. I'm not sure. I'm still recording some videos, normal ones, so that I can start editing them once I get a camera and get some normal videos back out to you. I had some questions about office tours, what got me started in YouTube, how to make money with video, those types of things. So I'll do another video probably next week, another live one while I'm still waiting for my camera to get some more info on those questions that people have asked. But hope this was helpful for you, getting some of those common question answers out of the way. So if this was helpful, hit that like button, like always, subscribe if you haven't, and look at my Facebook page if you want more help. I said in my last video, but just to remind you, it's a lot easier for me to interact with people on that Facebook page because I get notified a lot on that, whereas on YouTube, I only get notified for the first comment you make, and if you reply to other comments that I reply to, it doesn't notify me, and with all the comments I'm getting now, it gets lost in there, and it's hard for me to keep up conversations on YouTube. So Facebook, my group is linked in the description. We help each other out. Lots of people growing pretty big, almost to 200. So come there if you want more help. It's a good group. And that's it. I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.